Welcome back to Meet the Authors. I'm your host, Philip Levin. So glad you could join us again. So many people love to read, and it's just as good to read on ebooks as it is in regular books, but I know so many people who say, I just love having a book in my hand. It brings back fine memories for me. I love to write. I've written 24 books. I have poetry, I have short stories, I write magazine articles. It's a joy of communicating, a joy of bringing the spoken word into literary form and have people enjoy their reading. I also love traveling. I love to write about my traveling. This lovely vase here I brought back from China. I took a trip down the Yangtze River, visiting Shanghai and up into a Buddhist monastery and over to Xi'an to see the soldiers there. It's always a joy to see the world and get other perspectives, and I use that in my writing. This book, Consuto and the Rain God, is a book I wrote about a Chinese fable. I took photos from my trip to China. You can see this one and the other photos. And so they're just lovely little photos and a children's story about a dragon rain god who lives in the clouds above a small village called Dakto. It's written for children. It's a fairy tale, and it's based on Buddhist mythology, though it's an original story. And in the back, it gives a little history of China. It talks about the religions and the cultures and the artifacts. It's just a great little book for children to begin reading. And what's great about it is it comes with the CD of me reading it. I've recorded the CD, Chinese music in the background. It's a delightful little piece. I'm going to read the first paragraph just to give you a concept of the fable. Consuto, the old soothsayer, lived in a small village called Dakto, high in the magical mountains of China. People from his village and those from the nearby hamlet of Plukop came to ask questions of his great wisdom. Farmers came to talk of planting, shorekeepers discussed their investments, and young people chattered in love. A sense of writing literature, of fairy tales, is like writing poetry. You want to make it poetic. You want to make the sense of adventure and mysticism in just an enjoyable type sense. So think about this. You can get my book and all of my books on my website, www.doctorsdreams.com. We have two great guests today coming up after the break. We have Lenny Emanuel, who's written several poetry books, won lots of awards, has over 200 published books, 200 published poems. We're looking forward to having him. Followed by Eric Zolla, who's going to talk about his amazing adventure story, Raiders in the Lost Ark. As a child of 10, he was so enthralled with the movie that he made a movie of his own with his friends. It's a wonderful story. That movie has won a lot of awards and done a lot of tours. So stay tuned, because after these messages, we'll be right back with some great entertainment about local authors. Mississippi Gulf Coast and Neighboring Sites Anthology contains a collection of 25 essays about the history and tourist attractions across Mississippi's Gulf Coast. Features include the Round Island Lighthouse, Mary Mahoney's Old French House, Beauvoir, and the Friendship Oak. Read about the history of the Bellingrath Gardens and now defunct Si's Place, where Elvis Presley and Hank Williams performed. Only $10 at www.doctorsdreams.com. This is From Father to Son. This is my father and me. My father started writing poetry when he was 65 and wrote until he was 90. He wrote over 200 poems. And I commemorated those poems in a biography form, talking about him and talking about me and our lives together. And this is this poem I wrote about my father. This poem actually won a first place in the Mississippi State Poetry Contest. As a child, my father stuttered so badly, afraid to make friends. After school, he'd climb into his treehouse with his thick glasses and a stack of books, hiding from the insults of the world. Graduated with a perfect 4.0, he worked on the Manhattan Project and devoted his career to scientific research. My father loved poetry, memorizing and reciting, never stumbling over those words while doing dishes or mowing the lawn. He understood children's failings, never spanking, patience with homework, and our fears, devoted to my mother, his one and only for 65 years, even now, at 90, living together in the nursing home, with her mind no longer there. She rests her head on his shoulder, and he tells her a poem. These are things that you can do, share your memories. If you want to get my books, they're available at my website, www.doctorsdreams.com.
I'm Dr. Brian Sack.
I has been with him about 8 years.
And Dr. Sack is a good person.
He's a good people person.
Well, we treat the patient with chronic pain.
All the medicine the doctor give me, everything is going good.
Well, here at Pain Stop, our patients are #1.
The pain that I was having, he have it under control and have it as to where I can function every day on a daily basis.
We use different diagnostic and therapeutic injections to help our patients.
Lo que yo le quiero decir especialmente a los puertorriqueños,
And I've had a good experience with the clinic. All the people are very educated and very helpful.
Epidural injections, sympathetic block, facet block injections, and various kind of nerve blocks.
And since I've been referred to him as pain management, he has really helped me.
It's a team effort.
We do our best to manage their pain according to their pathology, and I think we do a really good job. Dr. Sing's a very good doctor.
And I think he's a really good doctor.
que vengan aquí porque esto es un buen doctor.
He's a good doctor, and I'm happy to be associated.
Call 228-273-4096. And welcome back to Meet the Authors. Thanks for staying with us. Our guest today is Lenny Emanuel. Hello, Lenny. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Lenny Emanuel is a very famous poet. He's published over 200 poems and articles, and is established in both Britain and America. In fact, let me just ask you, Lenny, to start off tell us about some of your awards and recognition.
Oh my. Well, I've been international. I've been in the prestigious British journal Agenda of American Poets. I've been in a number of anthologies, but I have to say it right up front, I didn't write for money or for fame. I live to write, and I write to live. And pretty much began when I was just a small boy. My mother and father were musicians, and they used to put me over to the side, of the stage and give me crayons and pens and all, and I just was writing. I do play the alto sax. I play at it, but I used to. There were tenor saxophonists and myself. We used to back up the poets and everything.
So your parents were musicians, and they taught you to play the sax, huh?
No, they gave me a saxophone, but I became a football player. Can you imagine that?
Maybe there was a hint there.
I don't know.
So you're a football player too. You played, tell us, you played in high school and with the Marines, right?
I played high school. I was all region, all state, and I went in the Marines, and I got injured, and I went to Miami, the University of Miami in Florida, and I went there to play football and box and track, and I won my division in boxing, but then I failed the physical. The physician came out and said, Mr. Emanuel, I can't recommend that you play football here. If you get hit on a punt, return, you could be paralyzed or dead, because I had a neck injury. So
good reason not to play, I would say.
I went to the University of Miami as an athlete, and I left there as a student, and I got degrees in chemistry and English, and went on to 7 universities.
7 universities?
7.
Wow. And Do you have degrees from all those universities?
No. But I primarily I was a chemist and microbiologist in pathology.
Now, pathology, that was your profession finally, wasn't it? You had because you were telling me about working with other doctors, working in the hospitals.
Well, I was basically I was a diagnostic bacteriologist. Was what I really liked to do, but I kept getting promoted, and the first thing I knew, I was in the administrative aspect of it, you know, dealing with people. Instead of a doer, I became a person who saw that things got done, and that was new for me.
So tell us about your poetry. You have so many books out. So hold up some of your books so we can see what you've got done.
This is the one that's it's received more notice than the other ones. It's
The Ice Cream Lady.
The Ice Cream Lady. She pulled me out of a fountain. I fell in the fountain there when I was, I must have been about 7 years old, and I hit my head on a rock, and
that explains a lot.
yeah, I was out. And the Ice Cream Lady, I was always her favorite. She always gave me an extra dip of chocolate, you know, ice cream. But anyway, she pulled me out, and so I named the book after her, and so forth.
And this is a collection of your poetry, or?
This one is. There are 3 here with my poems in them, and essays in here too. But I do this one because one of the things that I did come around to realizing, and I learned it in the Louvre in Paris. I'd heard that Hemingway had learned to write at the Louvre, and so I went there and I roamed around. I said, "What in the world could he have learned in an art museum?" And I finally ended up in front of the Mona Lisa, and I said, God, I wish Leonardo da Vinci was here. I'd ask him something. And I kept looking up there, and then I said, oh, he's out to lunch. You know, because he's not there. You see the paint strokes, you see Mona Lisa's eyes, the smile, but you don't see Leonardo da Vinci.
Oh.
And that was when I really, in my view, that's when I really did learn to write, because I had to get Lenny out of the way. Art was more important than I am. But this is an interesting issue, because another instance of my getting Lenny out of the way, because it's an edition of female poets, and as you know, they don't get published very much. So I took it upon myself. I have Germans in here, French. I even have a Czech in here.
Well, we want to hear some of your poetry. So let's start with reading one of yours,
well,
and then we can go on and some.
This one is called Outside the Moon.
Okay.
And I was in Iowa. I went to the University of Iowa when it was the only writer's workshop. And I was awakened about 2 or 3 in the morning. There was an affair over my head. And so I did the poem, and I didn't finish it until about 50 years later. But anyway, it's called Outside the Moon. Upstairs, springs are squeaking. I have been listening for some time here below, while the overhead affair reflects another kind of windows, moon and snow. Their springs go so rapidly, the bed must be made of iron, pounding, pounding, pounding my overhead floor, her gentle moanings embracing my silence. Finally, their springs stop, and immediately afterwards, heavy feet and light feet move across the upstairs floor toward the moonlit windows, these windows here below. My unavoidable listening, 2 moons quietly confused. Faucets are running now. Something drops like soap. She gently blows her nose. There's the sound of boots. A door is opening. The light feet are not the ones leaving. They are still near, waiting as they will be forever, caught, barely changing their bewildered positions. Perhaps she glances toward the moon. Perhaps she knows standing there about infinite aloneness, about loss and final goodbyes. Perhaps she will someday soon descend those winding stairs and ask some gentle question about this awful weather. When will spring be coming, or will the lilacs bloom this year? I know the way of her hair, the color it turns and rolls over her shoulders, the warm marking across the glass, her eyes watching a desolate moon.
Very nice. Oh, that was lovely. Very, very lovely. So we have about 1 minute left. Tell people where they can get your books. I think we have some on the video screen
Well,
that gives an address.
The distribution office is in New Orleans, and that's should be on the screen.
Yeah. So Ramparts LLC, they can actually write to that
They can write there
address
and
get information
Right.
about the book. But also you have an email, don't you?
There's an email, and they do have some phone numbers, but the Tybee, there are 3 phone numbers. There's Tybee 01, there's Tybee 02, and there's Tybee 03.
Those are all emails.
That's right.
That they can reach you and get information about your
Right.
books. All right, that's great. Hopefully I can put one on the website too, and we'll look forward to getting more information about your books. So that's Lenny Emanuel. Thanks for coming, Lenny.
Thank you.
He's a good friend of mine and a marvelous
Pleasure.
poet. Stay seated. And we look forward to being right back after these commercials with our next guest. Our next guest is Eric Zolla, who has this incredible tale about creating a movie as a child and has become a sensation. See you in just a minute. This is one of my books that I'm really proud of. It's On a Mission. It talks about my work as a missionary. It talks about the work I've done around the world, helping people out as a volunteer doctor. I worked in a malaria clinic on the Amazon River. I worked in a leper colony in India. And this book is about my 3 visits, each about a month, in Kenya, helping a hospital that had never had a doctor before. It's full of pictures. It's full of adventures. It tells us a tale of what it's like to travel, to be a missionary. And I'd like to read a poem from it, which I think will emphasize the work. This is a poem I wrote titled, Know Not, Want Not. In an orphanage in rural Kenya, a mud hut without power or water, my hosts, a pastor and his humble wife, who have never seen the world I know, never been on airplane or elevator, seen a show or watched TV, been to the beach, museum or zoo, known mail delivery or doorbell rung, no rugs on floors, no art on walls, no washing machine or range-top stove. Fast food restaurants are quite as alien as public toilets or table lamps. Yet they live with smiles on faces, eggs from their chickens, milk from their cows, avocados from trees, tomatoes from bush. And late at night, we sit and talk, me of my world and they of theirs, religion, faith, and children's needs. By kerosene lamp, their faces glow. This is what it's like to be a missionary. This is what it's like to publish your own work and get your message across. And welcome back to Meet the Authors. I'm so glad you could stay with us. For our guest today is Eric Zolla. And Eric, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Good to be here, Phil.
Eric Zolla. Eric has got a fabulous story to tell. At age 10, he had seen the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark. Remember that when it first came out? Some of us do. And he was so fascinated by it, he decided he wanted to shoot a movie just like it. He has a book that tells all about it, how he saw a friend with a comic book and he was inspired. And from there on, it was every summer until he now has this fabulous documentary. So Eric, show us your book and tell us a little bit about your movies.
Thank you, Phil. Yeah, it's a crazy story. Yeah, I grew up here on the Gulf Coast, actually here in Ocean Springs, and childhood buddy of mine, Chris Trompolis, a year younger, came up with this idea to do a shot-for-shot remake of Raiders Lost Ark and asked me, did I want to help? And I was, 11, and I said, yeah, okay, sure, having no idea what I was getting into. If we had known that we were committing the next 7 years of our lives to remaking it, I think we would have been terrified. But kids don't know what kids can't do, right?
That's right.
So, I was a sophomore at NYU Film School at age 19 when we finished. So I started when I was 12, finished when we were 19. 7 years, consumed the entire childhood.
And it certainly set the course for your life, I guess, if you ended up being a filmmaker and so forth.
Right. Yeah, at NYU, I enjoyed learning filmmaking methodically, as opposed to the filmmaking by osmosis, of kind of growing up and using the yardstick of the original Raiders. And then, at NYU, I wrote and directed an original that did well in the film festival circuit. So doing a remake is an interesting learning exercise, and definitely a different type of enjoyment than original.
It is an incredible film, too. I see you have copies of these films. Tell me about this.
So finally, after much delay, our film is actually finally available online, actually, at the website that's will be...
Hold this way.
Thanks. So 35 years in the making, basically. We shot most of the film back in the 80s, growing up here. And I know, there's a reason why it took us 7 years. I mean, we did it right. Authentic World War II submarine, got the boulder, live snakes. And then, finished, went off to life and everything. And then 25 years later, we got the band back together again and actually did the one scene that we couldn't do as kids, the airplane scene. Yeah. We raised $58,000 on Kickstarter and actually came back here to the coast. I was living in Vegas at the time, and it would have been, more deserty there, but, there's something special about doing it in your hometown. So we actually shot it in nearby Vancleave. And in the weird twist of things, there's now a documentary that actually covers that, sort of then and now.
Covers creating that last scene, creating the money and getting the airplane and blowing it up, and the big German doing the
That's
plane.
the scene. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that scene.
Yeah, I mean, the plane blows up at the end, so that's why we couldn't do it. We didn't want it to be cute. I know that might sound strange now, but we wanted it to be good. That was important ethos to us. So anyway, it's actually available on Netflix. If you search on Netflix for the word Raiders, it'll pop up. But that has been a wild ride. In the midst of this, before there was a documentary about these crazy Mississippi kids doing this shot-for-shot remake of Raiders Lost Ark, we worked with a great author named Alan Eisenstock, who did a really amazing book that kind of captured it. And then
tell me about this book.
Oh, yeah. So actually, it came out in 2012, shortly after I left Ocean Springs for Las Vegas. Alan Eisenstock is a really fantastic author with a great, captures the comedy and the sense of humor, as well as some of the anguish of this kind of long journey remaking Raiders
kids
over 7 years.
Starting 11 years old, doing 7 years to make a movie during the summers with a little Betamax and such. That's amazing. Now tell us what's going on with the film. It's gone all over the world, tours and stuff?
Yeah, so after the book came out and we did the documentary and the airplane scene, which covered that.
At first it was like a Vanity Fair article.
That's right. Before either of those was a 10,000-word feature article in Vanity Fair back in 2003 it was. It's a great piece, also available online at the website. That'll be listed later if anyone's curious. Done by Jim Windolf, really great read. The book, goes into yet more detail in its discovery 14 years later, and we got to meet Steven Spielberg, which was an amazing thing.
You got Steven Spielberg?
Yeah, my childhood hero.
Yeah, all of our childhood heroes.
I mean, to having spent my entire childhood emulating his directorial, kind of tracing his footsteps directorially, it was amazing that after our film was quite accidentally discovered, and the book goes into the how, that's a story in and to itself. But he spent about 45 minutes with us at DreamWorks.
Nice.
In his offices there, talking about life and Raiders and movies, and even showed us outtakes from the original Raiders. I was
Well, fun. What
Yeah.
a fun experience. That's
Yeah.
great. And
Yeah.
so, and then the movie now has been shown in how many countries? How many locales?
Gosh, so we, after it was discovered by accident, people tracked us down through the internet. We embarked on like 13 years of touring. Festivals and whatnot would fly us out. Then when the documentary came out, to support the doc's theatrical release, my family and I went on a 4-month, 65-city road tour across America in 2016 to do a double feature of the doc and the fan film and answer people's questions. It's because, yeah, folks always have a lot of questions, and that actually arose after that. A lot of teachers and educators approached me afterwards and said, this is a really amazing story. Is there any way you can share your film for our students? They'd find it really inspiring, and that led to what I'm doing now, which is I travel and I speak at schools and art centers and colleges and share the film and this crazy story, which has been remarked as a bit of project-based learning, as they say in the educational realm these days. How did these kids, all outside of a classroom, deal with the need for resourcefulness, tenacity, problem solving, collaboration, all those things that are good life skills.
And dealing with the police on occasion too.
Yeah. And that takes me to the final entry. Back when we did Kickstarter, I finally published the storyboards that I drew back when I was 12.
And this is a book that's now available.
Yes. Also at website ericszala.com.
Put the website up for us.
Yeah. So it's www.ericszala.com.
This is raidersguys.com. Is that the same website?
Actually, that's a different one. But they're available both places.
Okay. So www.ericzala, ERICZALA.com.
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah. So, when we did the Kickstarter campaign, I dug up the original. Thank you. Storyboards that I drew. Back when we were started off when we were kids, we were sort of fumbling around in the dark.
Attic, huh?
Yeah. So I drew Raiders. Wasn't available at your local Blockbuster back in 1982. So we saw the movie as many times as our allowance would sustain. I think which was about twice. And I actually snuck in an audio tape cassette recorder into Surfside Cinema 4 to capture the soundtrack. And sure, it was marred by audience cheering and whatnot, but it was a memory jog. And I bought everything Raiders could get our hands on, the storybook on record, trading cards, and I splayed all the accumulated reference material out on the dining room table. And I spent a whole summer drawing from memory every single shot, 602, and that forms the main content of the book. Also in there, we've got some behind-the-scenes photos and some correspondence.
I love this. Well, we're out of time. It's just been nonstop thrill to hear about the book, just like the movies, nonstop thrill. And we're so glad you could come and join us. Boy, I hope people can get this. It'll be available on my website if you want to put up my website. Many of our authors' books and my I'm up this way now. And my books are available here. So please check us out and come back for our next episode. So Eric, thank you for being with us.
Phil, it's a pleasure.
Pleasure. And thank you all for joining us in your home. We're looking forward to having you come back next week. We'll have a new show and 2 new local authors. Support your local authors. They're here to write their heart's desires out to us. Like us on Facebook too. So until next time, thanks for joining us, and meet us back on Meet the Authors.